All right, hi everybody. Welcome to the SWAN Fireside Chat for October 2021. We have a pretty good agenda for you. It is fairly Aspen focused for obvious reasons. First, we're going to talk about just a little quick reminder on handling unusable and damaged items. Then we'll fall into Aspen. I'll turn it over to Tara, who will give us a rundown of the rollout. We're going to talk about fines payment, which is a hot button issue. I'm going to talk a little bit about some known issues with Aspen and our bibliographic data that we are working on solving, but just so you'll be familiar with some of the things you'll start seeing. Tara is going to talk about accessibility, our accessibility statement. I'll come back and talk about a new Rails networking group that we have in the works. We'll talk about Sonic Wall and some stats and the Circ advisory. So I'm going to dive right in and send it over to, I believe, Crystal or Dawn is going to cover this for us.
All right, I'll jump in and I'm going to ask Vicki and Helen to jump in with any updates. We have gotten some tickets in that some items that are damaged are being sent in delivery, but the transits pop-up is being canceled. So just remember, you always need to follow those on-screen instructions. You don't want to cancel the transit pop-ups because when that happens, it appears that the item is back on shelf at its home library. So it basically is there to, in the system, it's going to place or fulfill another hold. So we just have to make sure that we're following the documentation for processing of those items. We've got really detailed instructions with the link here. And if you ever encounter that problem and you need some assistance and you're just not sure what to do with it, go ahead and submit a support ticket, put that item on the side, and we'll contact you and we'll walk through those procedures with you, because it is a little tricky knowing what to do the first few times you encounter this, but once you've done it a few times, it becomes second nature. So just remember, make sure those items don't end up back in delivery and they appear to be on shelf at the home library. Vicki, Helen, you got anything to add with that?
I think you're good. I think you explained it well. This is if you are used to using that transit label generator, this is one of the times where you won't be able to use it. Just follow that documentation that's there if you are checking it out to unusable, and follow that manual transit label the way that the documentation says. You want to put that to the attention of the library, and by making sure that you keep it checked out to unusable rather than in transit, you're retaining the last patron information.
And if I could just hop in really quick, when you don't ever cancel a transit, because it doesn't actually cancel the transit, it kind of skips the transit to puts it into that next state. So that's how it ends up on shelf or on hold for somebody. It's bad news. Don't cancel a transit. And follow the documentation, please.
All right, thanks. I suppose that does it. So now, if there's no questions at the moment about that, I'm going to turn it over to Tara to start talking about Aspen.
Hey everyone. So our first cohort is almost live. We just got a couple more libraries going live tomorrow and Thursday. So far we've got 17 libraries went live last week. So congratulations to all those libraries. We have a full list on our SWAN support site that you can take a look at. And I thought I'd just review a couple of these of stats from our first week of go lives, our Aspen sessions. So this is kind of the number of times someone went on the catalog and looked around and then left. That those went up 23%. The number of users, which probably devices is really more accurate, but that's users is kind of the standard. But that user number went up 21%, and Aspen sessions make up about 30% of the total sessions in both catalogs by the end of that that first week. So Scott, if you want to go to that next screen, you'll see this is a screenshot of our patron use report, which you can get to through the URL in that previous slide, but also just straight from the homepage on the support site. If you just click on that stats button, that will take you to the page that has all of our stats and a link to this report. So you can see some comparison data here between kind of Aspen and Enterprise as you go live. And if you're one of the libraries that is now live on Aspen, you can use this report to limit to your city. We can't limit to catalogs. That kind of does some weird things with user and session data. It's not possible with Enterprise to get that accurate and limiting to your library, but we can limit by your cities and the right that in your service area, and kind of get some more detailed stats for your specific area if you'd like. I also wanted to point out, just looking at traffic and patterns, your websites are the #1 driver of traffic to Aspen. Clicks on the Enterprise banner link to Aspen are actually very low. So on this little screenshot here, you can see some stats we have of tracking the clicks on those Enterprise banners that have a link out to your Aspen catalog. And it's super low. Actually, and those first 5 libraries in that list have not yet pointed their websites to Aspen, so that's why their clicks are a little bit higher than some of the others. But we're generally seeing, people kind of get on the catalog, get off, and they're not necessarily exploring Aspen from Enterprise. So if you go to the next slide. Now you can see the stats of libraries that have their catalogs pointing out to Aspen and how much higher the traffic is. Even for some of these libraries like Elmwood Park and Batavia and LaGrange Park, it's just been a couple days that they've been live. So definitely that kind of tells us, you're really the ones that decide when you're, quote unquote live on Aspen. And that sort of leads us to think that maybe just setting one standard soft launch date for the cohort 2 libraries might make it a lot easier, both for SWAN to prepare and just in communications for you. So, hey, on this date, we're posting an Enterprise banner for everyone, and you can kind of start dipping your toes in the Aspen waters with your patrons and then decide yourselves when you're gonna really make that full switch over. So I thought I'd just post the second cohort schedule and remind everyone that will start on January 10th will be our kickoff meeting, so definitely be sure to make that. We'll answer a lot of questions and give you a solid overview of how the process will go, and then we'll again have Aspen office hours every other Monday, a bunch of admin trainings, and we're looking at a soft launch date for that week of March 7th. It's coming up just around the corner. And then I'm actually going to turn it over to Dawn to share a little more about our Aspen fines payment journey.
Okay, and I'll probably pass it around to Aaron and Stephen and Rudy. And just to let you know, a lot of us have been involved in trying to get this Aspen fines payment working. I will say that working with Bywater has not been the problem at all. It's been working with the merchant, ProPay. So we wanted to use our existing ProPay established setup and use those API keys. But what we have found after 6 months of meetings with ProPay to try and get this resolved is that we would need new API keys for all of our libraries, which basically means there would be a second set of credentials that you would all have to manage and maintain those reports. So we'd have to do the application process, the activation, and then the account setup. Kind of on the flip side of that is once we continued to want to make that happen, but once we found out that it was just going to be this administrative overhead that you would all have a hard time on your end managing to get those applications set up again. We created a SWAN PayPal account, set it up in Aspen and tested, and that took 2 weeks. So libraries that are currently using PayPal, if you have your own merchant account with PayPal, we can work with you to turn that on for your catalog. So Erin, you want to just jump in since you were involved in a lot of this account setup and coordination?
Sure. Thanks, Dawn. This is Aaron Skog. This is the SWAN Executive Director. So yes, I'm confirming or affirming what Dawn said, that Bywater Solutions, who is the vendor that is providing us support and development for Aspen Discovery, has definitely not been the holdup here in terms of integrating existing library ProPay accounts that are used. And these are the accounts that you use for your magnetic swipes to take payments at the desk, but those are also the ProPays what's used in enterprise, and payments made in your enterprise profile goes to your library's ProPay account. I'd have to verify the exact number, but I believe there's 88 libraries in SWAN that have ProPay accounts. Keep in mind that we do have some libraries that are not public, so they don't really have a great deal of interest in having an online payment option. That said, there is a number of libraries using ProPay. So just to make clear, you'll continue to have ProPay integration with your magnetic swipes. But what we're looking at, the reality of having to then say, if we wanted to integrate ProPay, which I think we still will work on to make sure we have integration, but this integration is taking so long, and I just have to apologize to everyone that it has taken so long. I'm going to say SWAN could be at fault for just waiting so patiently with ProPay to get their act together, but the time has just sort of reached a critical point where we need to have the payment system in place. We obviously have libraries going live, and some of you may not have switched your catalog links perhaps over because you're waiting for maybe some online payment. So the online payment is coming. It's going to be with PayPal for the moment, meaning like we'll be using this for a while as we kind of work through potentially maybe some other payment options in the future. But let's just say PayPal is going to be our payment vendor for this launch of cohorts 1 and 2. So I think we have polls and some overview of what this looks like.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide, Scott. So this is what the interface looks like. And this is actually a live test that we just ran yesterday. So you can see that the patron, when they go to their finds, they will get the PayPal integration option. So if you have a PayPal account as an individual, you can use your PayPal account payment options, which are direct PayPal or the pay later, which is a PayPal service. And then you can also pay by debit or credit card. So that is all integrated and working. If we go to the next slide, Scott, we want to just get some feedback from all of you on your thoughts of adding centralized PayPal and reconciliation of, kind of SWAN serving as a pass-through and getting that money back to you if we use a shared PayPal account. As Aaron said, enterprise and all other services that are currently using ProPay would be unaffected, but we are working to make the catalog ILS neutral. And right now, the ProPay is tightly integrated, into Blue Cloud Commerce, and that's why we've kind of had difficulty teasing that apart to make it accessible in Aspen. So Scott's gonna go to the next slide, and then he's gonna pull up some polls for you. We just want to get your impression. So if you could just enter any thoughts related to online payment. special circumstances of what you're doing would be great. And also fill out these polls and we'll see kind of the pulse of everybody. So what credit card payment options does your library currently support? So click all that apply. And after we get a good response, Scott will go ahead and publish those so we can see your response. Yeah, we've got a question. Is the poll just about catalog payment option or anything? I would say anything.
Yeah, I would agree, anything, because we do know that there are libraries that like the integration that ProPay provides. If the mag swipe is used, it will interact with Symphony. But we also know that some of you are also making additional payments maybe outside of Symphony, so you have maybe different staff procedures or workflows. You may actually be entering in those payment or bills, I would say, maybe into Symphony and going from there. So we try to keep it flexible, but okay, so it looks like we're, yeah, not surprising here with this poll result. ProPay Online is the vast majority, but we do see some libraries are using Square, and then PayPal and Apple Pay.
Yeah, and we'll share comments coming in and we'll try and compile them all with a list of who's using what. So next question of which of the following options would your library prefer for online payment processing in Aspen? Just to give us a guide of which direction to go to get this rolled out as quickly as possible to people.
%42% have voted, 45%. We're kind of holding a few more people are voting. Scott, you may want to share results. Yeah. All right. Well, certainly there's some of you prefer the library direct PayPal payment, but we are looking at some receptive. A lot of you seem receptive to the idea that we could centralize the PayPal and then make this part of a quarterly reconciliation. So, you know, I would just add, and Dawn, we can talk a little bit and others jump in. We do know that the landscape in terms of what libraries are dealing with in terms of fines and fees as far as payments is changing quite a bit for our public libraries. This isn't to say we want a one size fits all, you know, fine free, you know, approach, but there's a lot of libraries doing that. But it does seem that lost material or unreturned material that needs to be paid online is still going to be an important part of your library business.
Yeah, and with the centralized SWAN PayPal with reconciliation and a library's direct PayPal, we think we can get both of those. So a library could decide one or the other. And that's what we'll be discussing with the Aspen team, development team this afternoon. So this input's really great for us to hear. So your thoughts are really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say that this is sort of sometimes, you know, if you work someplace long enough, things kind of come full circle. And I'll just say, when I started at SWAN, all the fines payment came into a single account. And as we looked at our opportunity with Cersei Dynex to move into their Blue Cloud Commerce solution, we took the step of asking all of our libraries that wanted online payments to set up a ProPay account. And so you've all been managing those for the last 6+ years. So, you know, I regret that the ProPay online payment option really hasn't worked out and we're going to PayPal, but we do have some prior experience with using it all centrally and then quarterly kind of reconciling. So we're going to be kind of drawing upon that experience just to make sure you have that payment option.
All right, thanks a lot. If we're ready to move on, I will advance to Aspen and our bibliographic data, which again is just a couple of known issues that we've gotten some tickets on since launch and even before that. So the first, this is actually two separate things that are kind of closely related. Audience information and fiction, nonfiction information. The browse category feature of Aspen well, it's pretty great, which if you're not familiar, it allows you to create lists or sort of automated searches of to highlight parts of your collection. So, new juvenile DVDs, for example, or, Polish language playaways, whatever you want to do. So when users are calling on things like audience and fiction, nonfiction, it's sort of highlighting some of the weaknesses in our local metadata. And I just sort of want to highlight those examples. So for audience, just an understanding of how it works. Right now, Aspen's audience facet is based on item data, that item category 2 that catalogers may be familiar with, that allows, of course, each of our catalogers at every library to select which age group an item is intended for in their collection. So the choices are adult, teen, and juvenile. So the issue with that is that, say there's a film with 100 different items attached to it. If all of those items say adult, but one of them says juvenile, then that film is going to turn up in a search for juvenile materials. And so sometimes, user error introduces problems and inconsistencies between different items with regard to age group, but also sometimes libraries just make different choices, or they may buy multiple copies of an item and have them available for different in different parts of their collection for teens and adults, for example, or juvenile and teens. So we don't have too much control over those choices. So sometimes you will see some things you don't expect to see in a browse category search for example, juvenile materials or adult materials. And sometimes we can fix that. If it is very clearly an error, sometimes we can just tell there's a mismatch between a location and the audience category. But sometimes it's not clear. We have to reach out to the library, and sometimes it is clear that this is just an item that sort of spans age groups, and people have made different choices. So there is something that we're considering. There is the option in Aspen to switch to using bibliographic records to populate audience data, which would mean that each bibliographic record had one single value. Of course, that's sort of a can of worms in itself, potentially, because that sort of locks in that decision of where an item will show up in a search, but it also has the possibility of causing more problems than it's worth with regard to precats and vendor records that may not have enough information in them to do the audience analysis. So we're going to try it out in our test instance of Aspen and see what it looks like. But if it ends up being more trouble than it's worth, we'll stick with what we're doing now and just sort of have to respond to these inconsistencies as they come up. So yeah, feel free to keep sending them in, but that is the situation at the moment. And in terms of the fiction nonfiction facet, it's similar. We just have some inconsistent representation. And these generally tend to come from vendor precats. Baker and Taylor, Ingram, Midwest Tape, they all provide bibliographic records. And sometimes they're great, and sometimes they're pretty spare, especially for pre-release items that don't have cataloging and good metadata available for them to I guess, sort of glean from. So one of the things that ends up happening is a lot of fiction items end up looking like nonfiction to things that are doing bibliographic analysis like Aspen. So you'll see some inconsistencies there. In this case as well, always feel free, we're aware of the issue, but always feel free to send in individual cases and we'll fix them for you, because there's some stuff we can do. But I am trying to devise a plan with my team to sort of get ahead of these. I had a kind of a brainwave of how we can identify these types of items. They're hard to pin down and find, but I think we're onto something with a report that we'll start looking at. So yeah, just be aware that this is something that we're aware of. And the second slide here is about format. And depending on what Aspen meetings you've been to, we've talked about the fact that Aspen gleans format from different parts of a bibliographic record. It doesn't use necessarily just the SWAN custom 590 format vocabulary that we're used to. It has a vocabulary that's a lot more granular. It's really great, actually, because it can really dig down deep and figure out, not just that thing, for example, that a thing is a video game, but what platform it's for. Not just that a thing is other audio, for example, but we can make distinctions between LPs and cassettes and all of this stuff. So that's good, but also our data doesn't always back it up as much as it needs to. And again, the issue lies with pre-cat records, vendor records, and sometimes local records that libraries create for things that they're distributing, like kits and equipment and all of those sorts of things that don't have full mark cataloging. We have had an enhancement request in place with Bywater to read the 590 and sort of have that as a last resort. If it can't figure out the format, it'll just look at that and categorize it as necessary. I created a translation table between those and the Aspen formats. It's not been implemented yet. We don't know the timeline of implementation on that, but it is something that is in the works. So hopefully we'll have that kind of cleaned up as soon as possible. So a lot of the format, when we do see format issues, format inconsistencies, they tend to be because of this exact issue, and so we are working on it. So I just wanted to point that stuff out. And last, and I actually meant to have this up earlier, this is our calendar for Aspen office hours over the next month. Tara, was there anything you wanted to say about this?
No, just that they have been sparsely attended of late, but I think we could really benefit from some people showing up and bringing their browse category questions, searching questions, theme questions, all that good stuff. So definitely come and take advantage of the office hours.
Great, thank you. And sorry for misplacing the slide, it should have been earlier. I'm going to let you now continue talking about the accessibility statement.
Yeah, so this will just be brief. We have posted an accessibility statement to the SWAN support site. On that page, there's also a form where you and your staff can report any accessibility challenges that you have and using any SWAN tools. Right now, this is staff-facing only. We do plan to develop something for patrons for the catalog specifically. So the statement outlines our plans to improve accessibility for both patron and staff-facing services. We've been pretty focused on patrons over the past few years, but we do really want to give our staff-facing services some love as well, and we're pretty excited to get moving on the Blue Cloud staff platform, for example, that will include a lot of enhancements that I know staff have been asking for years, like the ability to increase the text size easily, and things like that. They'll just make it easier for a lot of people to do their jobs. We have also included some resources for your libraries, if you're interested in doing some accessibility evaluations, say of your website. We've got the tools posted that we like to use, as well as we'll post any trainings that we have, or we have a training planned for 2022 on some basics using accessibility evaluation tools. And we just kind of essentially want to state our commitment to putting accessibility first, especially in the catalog and e-resource group purchases. We want to make sure that that we're not taking any steps to make our catalog worse for patrons to use, especially because we put so much effort into to getting Aspen meeting accessibility standards, and we're really excited about that. So do be sure to contact SWAN first if you're purchasing any third-party services that would integrate with the catalog. We are committed to not adding any new third-party services to the catalog that don't meet accessibility standards. So we're not taking anything away right now. If you have a chat widget in Enterprise, we'll add that to Aspen for you and keep working on the vendors to get those up to standards. I know some things like Access 360 also have some problems, so we're going to work on the vendors and getting those better. But we don't want to add anything new that's going to cause any issues. So just contact us if you're looking at something, and we can talk to the vendors and ask them about their accessibility and see what information we can get with them, and then also see what we could get them to commit to changing, like as part of a contract. And that's always the best time to get a vendor to make some changes, is at that point of negotiating that license.
All right, thanks. So next, we are pretty excited to announce a new Rails-sponsored networking group that's going to talk about issues in diversity, equity, and inclusion in metadata. So it's called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Metadata Networking Group. And the goals, especially early on, are to just facilitate conversation in this space early on regarding subject analysis in particular, but we always are planning on expanding on into other arenas there, and just basically host topical discussions on issues related to marginalized groups and how they're represented in our catalogs, and start creating a shared repository of knowledge and ideas. So you may be familiar that SWAN has a group of this ilk that is sort of doing work in the subject arena at the moment. You haven't heard from us in a while. We are on a break at the moment. I was out on vacation for a good amount of time and then came back to the Aspen launch. So I owe them an email. We're going to get back on track fairly shortly. But this is sort of something that came out of that. We were realizing that our conversations were kind of, siloed, and we didn't always have the voices in the room that we needed to really get this moving. We also realized that we're having conversations in our area and other groups are having conversations on the same topics. And so why not put our heads together as much as possible and sort of reduce sort of the amount of work that we're all going to have to do in our own, and just start getting ideas out there. So I'm co-chairing the group with Rachel Fisher, who has a similar role to me at the CCS Consortium. We have administrative support from Nancy George at Rails, who's doing a lot of communication and outreach for us starting this week. So hopefully you'll hear about this group. There is a kickoff meeting on the schedule. If this is something you're interested in listening in on or participating in, we really encourage anybody who might be interested to join. You don't necessarily have to have cataloging knowledge or any projects going on at your individual institutions or anything. It's really just a forum to meet other people and start thinking about these things. So on November 17th, I didn't put the time on here. It is in the afternoon at 1 o'clock or 1:30. I don't remember exactly, but this L2 link will get you the registration. And we're going to talk about some of these topics. Rachel and I are going to share what we've each done with our respective groups, and hopefully get some other voices talking about what they've been doing in the Illinois library community. And we're also trying to collect some documentation on the subject analysis topic. So we'll share what we've put together and see what we can glean from other folk. So feel free to check this out on L2. You'll also see a link through that event to sign up for a listserv that's going to support the group. And we're also all putting together a repository, like a shared drive, where we can have sort of documentation for people to refer to, and of course minutes and all of that. So it's pretty neat, and definitely consider checking it out. And also in this first meeting, we will be talking about kind of our goals and the trajectory we want to see in 2022. So that's it for me, and now it is time for Stephen to come on and talk about SonicWall.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. This is Stephen. I wanted to give an announcement to kind of a selection of libraries. There are a handful of you out there that have SonicWall firewalls that are managed by SWAN. So you're not self-maintainer. We're managing your firewall. So that means when you have rule changes and stuff, you reach out to us. And we also troubleshoot VPN connections and all that for you. So there's just a handful of those libraries that have kind of grandfathered in that we're still managing the Sonic walls. And then of those libraries, there are, I want to say about 20 that have Sonic walls that are end of support. So they're no longer supported at all by SonicWall. They're not receiving patching or anything like that. They've recently gone end of support. We need to replace those Sonic walls in your libraries. Rudy Host sent an email a couple months ago to the affected libraries directors in addition to the aliased email addresses. We received notices, or we received responses back from a few of you. Some of you are interested in moving self-maintainer. Some of you have selected the Sonic wall that you want to move forward with. For the other libraries that we have not heard from, we need to expedite this process. So we went ahead and we purchased the Sonic walls for you. So we actually just put in an order today. We bought the TZ470, which is actually the top of the line unit that we've been recommending. We managed to get a group purchase on that, and it makes it about the price of the cheapest model that we're recommending. So everyone wins. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to receive all those. Well, we're going to configure those on site at SWAN headquarters at Quail Ridge. And then we're just going to start scheduling with you to get those Sonic walls rolled out to your libraries and get them swapped with the current units that you have in place that are expiring. We're going to be scheduling those between November and January. It requires on-site visits, so it's a little bit difficult to get those planned out, but we're going to do our best to work around schedules and things like that. If you've been thinking about it and you're thinking that your library would rather go self-maintainer and you want to use some firewall equipment that you currently have on site that it's in service, maybe it's not a Sonic wall, maybe you have a Cisco equipment or something like that, and you want to go self-maintainer, have your own IT staff maintaining your firewall and your VPN, just email us right away and let us know so that we won't get you on this schedule for the replacement. But that said, if you have, basically, if you are managed by SWAN for your Sonic wall and you have one of the Sonic walls that we emailed you about that is end of support, we need to get that replaced as soon as we can. And so we're going to have those TZ470s coming in for those replacements. These Sonic walls, after we have them replaced, they are going to be billed back to the library. I don't have the exact numbers yet, but we're looking at a little over $700 per unit. So your library would be billed back for that replacement unit. Another thing that I want to mention, we've gotten a lot of questions. Libraries are looking at cybersecurity insurance, and one of the questions is your network equipment secured by multi-factor authentication? And I just want to say we have rolled out a multi-factor authentication tool to all of your Sonic walls. So the ones that we are managing, if you're self-maintainer, if you're managing your own firewall equipment or your own Sonic wall, that's up to you to enable that. But for the Sonic walls that we manage, we've enabled a service called Duo, which is an enterprise service offered by Cisco. Doesn't mean you have to use Cisco equipment. You can use their service. And so we've enabled that across all the Sonic walls that we manage. So Duo multi-factor authentication is enabled. This only affects our administrative logins. So library staff, this will be completely seamless to you. But this is just to let you know, if you're applying for cybersecurity insurance, you do have multi-factor authentication enabled on your Sonic wall if we are managing your Sonic wall. So I just want to mention that. And that's everything for Sonic walls.
All right, thanks. So next we have some statistics. I believe these are carried over from last month, but they're just sort of here for your perusal. Circulation snapshot from the past few years has been showing sort of a steady increase since, well, everything was destroyed for a while. And we have an Aspen hold snapshot here. Is there anything that anybody wanted to comment on either of these?
Scott, if you could just go back to the previous slide. These are in the operations report that is part of the board packet each month, and we do have narrative that kind of explains this, but I find this chart really interesting. If you look at the line chart on the right, this is comparing the pattern of activity in 2019 versus 2021. And while our circulation is growing, we're at 75% now. Notice that the pattern of activity is almost a mirror of what it was. So I just find that shocking and amazing.
Agreed.
That's it.
Thanks. And last, a reminder from Crystal, I believe.
Hi everyone, it's Crystal here, and I just wanted to plug the SWAN Circulation Advisory election that's happening right now. The last day to vote is November 5th by 5 p.m. We have about 34 responses as of yet. Each library can have their circulation manager vote and vote once only, please. And yeah, that was all. I just wanted to give a little plug. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And then as always, we like to close out by highlighting our upcoming member meetings from now until the next Fireside. So, of course, my favorite is Cataloging Advisory. Coming up in a couple weeks, I will be talking about some Aspen issues with relation to the catalog. I just realized that my little screenshot here is out of date. So look at the text and not the picture. In this case, I apologize for that. Anything here that anybody at SWAN wants to highlight especially?
We do hope to have all of the meeting schedule for 2022 posted really soon. We're kind of debating on whether we're getting Zoom licenses and not using GoToMeeting or vice versa. So we're going to get the calendar out. The links may change, but we will certainly let you know as we move forward.
Alrighty. So that just about does it for this Fireside. Our next is November 30th, after Thanksgiving, at the same time. So are there anything that came up in the questions or comments that we need to bring out before we adjourn for the day?
Yeah, pie looks great.
Doesn't it? Yeah. I think we're okay. So yeah, I'll call it a day. I'm actually going to end the recording. I know we like to sort of stick around and then